is Jess Hay from Creative Cards to You. Today I will be showing you how to use stamping foam and magical powders to create beautiful backgrounds and die cuts for a great effect. Stick around. I used a piece of watercolor cardstock and an old art brush to apply Lindy's magical powders. The colors I used were Bling-y Blond and Sassy Sapphire. And you know, it doesn't take a lot. I just kind of brushed it over the paper to create yellows, blues, and greens. I then used my distressed water sprayer to apply water, and look what happens as the water droplets hit the powder. It just creates this great effect. I kept adding water until I was happy with the amount of water on the paper and used my brush to move the powder around and create some more of those greens. You can also pick the paper up to move the water and the pigment around as well. I decided I wanted a little bit more of that blue powder, but since my brush was wet, I used my fingers to sprinkle a little bit of the blue powder on the paper, and then I used the paintbrush to move it around. I used a second piece of watercolor cardstock and the colors Prima Donna Purple and Bling-y Blond. I brushed them on the paper and spritzed it with water, and look at how it turned out. I laid that aside to dry and turned to the next part of the project, designing the background with a piece of Simon Hurley's stamping foam. I put purple tape on a large acrylic block and put the foam on top of it. I then heated it up with my heating tool. You kind of want to move quickly once it's hot, but after it was hot enough, I then picked it up and placed it over the background stamp. Now this was Catherine Pooler's Flourishes stamp, and I leaned all of my body weight. I actually stood up and pressed it into the stamping foam because I wanted a really good impression. After getting the background stamp ready, I then applied ink. This is Catherine Pooler's In the Park. I usually like to do the lightest color first, and I'm just kind of putting it in random spots on the stamping foam. The next color I applied is Catherine Pooler's Cummerbund. This is a really pretty blue color, and I put this in the areas that there was not ink. I used my blending brush to kind of smooth out those jagged edges, and I also applied a little bit more ink where it looked like it needed it. I added a little bit more green because it looked kind of washed out next to the blue with my blending brush. I put a piece of cardstock on top and ran my fingers over it. I decided to do another background, so I reapplied some of those same colors, both by tapping my ink pad onto the stamping foam, but also applying my blending brush to the ink pad and then to the stamping foam. I sped this up because this is kind of the same as what you just saw, but I made a bunch of backgrounds with Pucker Up Chiffon and then Lilac and Whipped Honey. Cleaned the stamping foam with the baby wipe and went on to the next part of the project. For those backgrounds that we made from Lindy's magical powders, well, I am using them to make die cuts. This is one of my favorite die cuts. It's the Privet branch from Simon Says Stamp, and I'm just kind of cutting the backgrounds down to size and running them through the die press machine. Lindy's magical powder just gives it so much shimmer and shine. You can see it a lot better in real life. Off screen, I used the Privet branch die and made die cuts from all of the backgrounds that I had made. This Privet branch is pretty delicate, so I wanted to add some extra dimensions, so I die cut them from white cardstock and applied a thin layer of glue to the white die and attached the two pieces together. The Burley Arts glue gives you some time to kind of wiggle it into the place that you want. The next part to the project is to make sentiments, and I used this stencil from Concord and Ninth's Simplest Gestures. I made different color sentiments, one in Cummerbund, one in Pucker Up, and one in Lilac. I used the Stamp and Stick mat from Brutus Monroe to hold both the cardstock as well as the stencil for completing this part of the project. Concord and Ninth also has coordinating dies for the sentiments, so off screen I used my die cut machine to cut out all of the sentiments. To give this some extra dimension, I also die cut some of the hello sentiments from white cardstock and adhered them to the color sentiments using liquid glue. I used these dies from Gina K Designs Master Layouts 1 and 2 to cut backgrounds and color cardstocks. I used Burley Arts glue to glue the backgrounds onto the colored pieces of cardstock. You can see all of the designs that I was able to make from using the one piece of stamping foam and different colors of ink. I used liquid adhesive to put on the back of the Privet branch. That would give me a little bit of extra time to adhere it to the card where I wanted it to. I then put liquid adhesive on the back of the whole card panel and put it on a pre-cut A2 card base. I put a thin layer of foam on the hello sentiment and placed that at the bottom of the card. To finish off the card, I used these flat-backed rhinestones that I got from Amazon to give a little bit of extra sparkle. I just made sure that I used an odd number of stones. And there you have it. Thank you for watching to the end. Please leave a comment in the box below telling me which card is your favorite.